It's not that we're lacking ideas of what we could do technologically, but it is about how we translate those ideas into market opportunities.
Welcome to a brand new episode of our podcast, Human&AI, Mind, Machines, and the Gradient Descent.
Thanks for tuning in again to our geeky podcast to discuss the fascinating field of AI and machine learning, corporate craziness, passion for technology, and the role of humans in it. Today, we're super excited to have none other than Annemarie Große Frie with us. Annemarie is the head of research in energy and electronics at Siemens Technology. She's passionate about technology with a purpose along the line of collaboration, innovation, and sustainability. And we're already very excited for this episode, so let's lose no more time and kick off. Annemarie, it's such a pleasure to have you on the show. How are you and where do we catch you today?
Hi, guys. I'm very happy to be here. Thanks for having me. You're catching me in my beautiful dining room here in my flat in the downtown of the tech hub of Munich.
Nice one. There you go. Annemarie, there seems to be some kind of a trend. I've heard, we've recently talked to Peter, and there seems to be a branch that, bridging the worlds, strategy, technology, merging maybe both approaches, anchoring strategies and leveraging technology, right? And I guess you're a brilliant example of, how to commute between those worlds, right? How does it feel actually? Like, is it having like two passports and connecting the best of it, or maybe finally, coming home to industrial research?
No, that's a good question. I mean, certainly it doesn't feel schizophrenic, let's put it that way. I've always had two hearts beating in my chest. And, some people say culture eats strategy for breakfast. I don't think it's quite the same with technology and strategy. So what I'm really enjoying is actually that as Siemens, and if you look at where we're headed as a company with this clear affirmation that we want to be a technology company, that we've also taken the decision to really bring strategy and technology closer together. Not just organizationally, but also from the way how we do things. So we've just now undergone a rescoping of our major company or technology program, right? And I think this was certainly an extremely strategic effort. We did some outside-in benchmarking, some market studies. We chatted with the colleagues from strategy, brought it really all together to then inform our technological direction. And, looking at the broader landscape beyond Siemens, I think it's so crucial that what we do technologically is somehow informed by sound reasoning and by some market validation. And that's the whole thing about technology with purpose. And we don't just invent and we don't just do things because they're cool to build, but we do them because they're very much needed, right, to move us forward as a society, as a company. And so I am really enjoying being sort of a traveler here, straddling these two universes as they're coming together.
Living the jet set life, so to say.
The carbon neutral jet set life.
Because,
I took over this role just at the beginning of COVID. And of course, we have a global team. But very sadly, I must say, I have not even made it to Austria. We've been completely virtual for the past 18 months. And now, for pregnancy-related reasons, now I'm grounded. So it's really been an experiment in virtual collaboration.
Yeah, it changed so much. And you just mentioned that you started your new role beginning of COVID. That's already almost 2 years ago. And so you're heading the research department for energy and electronics at Siemens. So what are some of those topics or challenges that you're exploring or dealing with on a daily basis? Can you share some of your favorite use cases?
Absolutely. I think there are many, and there's much more to what we do than what the name promises. So let me give you a little bit of an overview. Certainly electronics is a fundamental pillar of our work, and actually we're now already scoping a new company core technology, which is going to be called integrated circuits and electronics, because of the fundamental strategic importance of the topic of electronics for Siemens, right? Because if we're serious about bringing together the virtual and the real world, we're going to need electronics to do this, right? Because at some fundamental level, it will be at the electronics level where these two worlds come together. So we are very much looking at the end-to-end value chain of electronics for Siemens. So starting from the design, where we have, a couple of years acquired this fantastic company called Mentor Graphics, which is one of the market leaders for electronics design, all the way down to how we manufacture our own electronics and how we can become more efficient. And I don't need to explain to the two of you that certainly within the whole scope of electronics manufacturing, the topic of artificial intelligence and machine learning holds tremendous promise. So I'm particularly excited about really seeing how we can push the boundary forward by really taking an end-to-end approach to electronics at Siemens. Another topic that I'm very passionate about and that we've spent considerable time in the past months to really get it off the ground is a much more dedicated focus around sustainability. But not sustainability as a buzzword, because, in the third derivative, you can really make anything having to do with sustainability, right? You can say, oh, well, if I build a digital twin of a machine, then it's somehow sustainable because I'm saving so and so much process efficiency. But we're also really looking at what role does infrastructure and energy systems in the future play in helping us achieve the carbon neutral goals that we have set ourselves as a society. And I think there, as a technology company, again, as Siemens, we have an incredible role to play in how we can use digital tools to really make the necessary technological advances in the area of sustainable technologies, from energy distribution to the way how we consume energy in different factory settings. All of this will become more efficient if we're able to use the tools of digitalization. So I like to say one of our key research areas is actually the topic of digital decarbonization, right? How we can use digital tools to decarbonize in a more efficient and also cost-effective way for our customers. Because I firmly believe there has to be a business case for sustainability, right? I think all the negotiations are showing it. Vested interests are so strong. Unfortunately, even though there's a clear moral case for decarbonization, there's market forces which dictate it. And so we have to make sure that the technologies we build are not just green, but also offer an economic perspective. How do we bring these two things together if we're really serious about decarbonizing the world? So we have some great teams here at Siemens working on the future of grids, the future of building automation, all with a view to how can we make these things more efficient, more sustainable.
Yeah, bridging the world, feasibility, desirability, and I guess also a bit of profitability, isn't it? Stakeholders are much more broader, right, to be considered than the shareholders, actually.
That's true. I think there's, thinking on that is changing. It's not just anymore about securing shareholder value, which of course is still important. But, take a look at BlackRock and Larry Fink and how he's driving as one of the key, shareholders of basically all Fortune 500 companies, how he's really driving this dialogue around. It goes beyond shareholder returns, or let me phrase it differently. Shareholder returns can be more multifaceted than just economic. Because ultimately, we're all shareholders in this planet, I think, in some sense. And so it's good that we're becoming more multidimensional in how we think about returns beyond just a purely economical aspect.
Do you think that we have to anticipate that in the future the market will be increasingly green? Because right now we already see that there's a shift of sustainability and profitability actually moving closer together, and there's like that market pressure, the pressure by shareholders that is increasing. And do you think it would make sense as a company to like invest now in maybe adjacent markets that aren't profitable today but might be in the mid to long term?
Well, I think it behooves us as a company to have a vision about where we want to go and to always be on the lookout for new markets. And I think especially in the area of sustainable technologies, we're going to see not just technological advances, but I think what we're going to see a lot in future is different business models. Yeah, business models that are fundamentally contrary to where we are today, where it's about selling products. Yeah. I think we will see as a service business models around decarbonization, maybe. We may even see some sustainability as a service offerings around, guaranteeing a certain climate neutrality for different companies. I think they're extremely, if you look at the startup world, if you look at what's coming out of universities, so many brilliant young minds experimenting with how really to bring business model innovation to the topic of sustainability, because technology will only be one aspect. Yeah, so I think for us at Siemens, yes, within technology, we are looking really for what are the trends and what can we do with the physics to move this topic forward. But it will go beyond that. I think it has to be coupled with great insights into what our customers want, what they're willing to pay for, and what business models will be feasible around this. Yeah, so I think it's also my view that we as a technology company, we have to look beyond technological innovation and also look at things like business model innovation. If I look at all these hyped companies from the Valley, right, that we like to look at so much, which of those are really driven by significant foundational advances in technology versus which of them are driven because they've got a clever business model? Yeah. Sure. So I think we have to have a lookout for both. And I think it will take both. Yeah. Certainly we need to make technological advances, be it in the areas of energy storage, be in the topic of efficient production machines, be it in carbon capture technologies. I mean, our homework is endless almost. Yeah. But we are living in a market economy. We will have to find ways how to make money with it. So we have to always have both sides of the coin in mind.
So when we talk about digitalization, and you are in the material space, right? That's somehow a bit of a different thing, right? So material space always is a bit of the hardware heavy, let's say, right? Focus. And then we see, all assets and our digital, all products are not digital, our processes shall be around digital. What is for you a digital material then?
Actually, I don't think the two things are contradictory at all, but I think they're coming together beautifully. And it actually ties back to the topic of sustainability. What we're trying to do is, yes, of course, Siemens is making a move towards software. Absolutely. We're making a move towards digital services because I think this is also where our customers see potential value, right? The big buzzwords are data and ecosystems. But we are still living in a physical world, right? I'm sitting here at a table. I'm looking at a physical computer screen. And to understand the physics behind of how these things work will always be needed, right? It's not enough just to get the data from a machine. If I don't understand the pressure behind it, the temperature behind it, the physical laws governing how a material is made. So I think on the one hand, we will always need some basic understanding of the physics, as long as we're not yet completely gone into a virtual world where we're all just meeting as avatars, yeah, which I think is still a long way off. That's the one thing. But what we can even do at a more molecular level, right? We used to do a lot of materials research in terms of how to make stronger materials. I think in future, it will be companies that are able to actually simulate digitally the material properties as part of this big buzzword around the digital twin, right? I think this is something we're looking at into. If we are really trying to build digital twin of our products, of our processes at the most foundational level, it will require a digital simulation of the physical material properties. And again, for that, I will also need a basic understanding of the physics and the material science of these materials behind it. And imagine, if I had a piece of software that would allow me to design a product optimized for end of life recyclability or minimum carbon emissions. If I can simulate that already in the design phase, I can have a tremendous impact afterwards.
Yes,
but this will require me to understand the material properties, to have a digital twin of those material properties. And I think this is a really neat area that we're looking more deeply into, and which is just getting started, and which is infinitely complex because how many elements are there in the periodic table? I mean, you can take it to the power of the infinite in terms of what it means to simulate all these different properties. But we've got to start somewhere. And I think from really wanting to have an end-to-end digital twin of a product, of a process, of a production, it starts with also being able to grasp digitally the material properties.
Yeah, pretty awesome. That's a hot turf, man. I mean, you're actually in a super technology space, right? Because if I from a previous collaboration and also ongoing collaboration, right? You have power electronics design, you have hardware, you do the battery intelligence, you do the additive manufacturing, which was super excited part of it. And so awesome, right? How do you see then the role of AI and machine learning in that space, right? And actually it's a big word, right? Now the consultants comes in here, transformation, right? Of energy and electronics industry. But I guess it is like a bit of a, mindset, but also technology-wise a transformation.
I see the role of AI in a way, as a great simplifier. Because take the topic of digital materials that I just mentioned. With the number of combinations possible, a human brain will never be able in one lifetime to calculate through all the different possible combinations that I would need to take account of, right? And I think this is where the power of machine learning, of artificial intelligence really can come in, when we have these gigantic sets of data, unstructured, to really help us streamline and identify where the real value is by somehow coming up with an intuitive, clever algorithm to help us really sort the important stuff from the distractions. And so I really think, and now it's getting almost philosophical, right? It's how much, what is really artificial intelligence, right? I mean, is the artificial intelligence always only as good as the person who designed the algorithm behind it, right? Like what actually does it have a life of its own? Do we actually understand when we write this piece of code always what it will do, or does it actually at some point have the ability to evolve further on its own and to make its own recommendations? So I think we're just getting started really in terms of what is possible with these technologies. But I think just looking at the amount of data we have, we will not be able to turn any of that into value in a reasonable time space without recoursing to artificial intelligence and machine learning.
Yeah, true. I was deeply impressed by also obviously by DeepMind's AlphaFold, and I think that's the protein folding. So that shows somehow that the exploitation of machine learning and reinforcement in these kinds of aspects on tackling vital aspects at bare level of the materials, basically, or in complex moleculars. Which is only doable through technology and partly, and that's some super passionate machine learning aspect, obviously.
Yes.
But speaking of a bit of the IT/OT thing, right? So as in Siemens, you mentioned it and motivated already, right? Hardware side is super important, and it's somehow the USP. Which is clear is having both competences somehow together. Hardware side and software side. So which nowadays it's called a bit of the IT/OT, right? Integration. And And thus, we have a broad experience in the OT world, and I think we have awesome colleagues around us. IT is still a bit like softer competences, right? In the large scale is still a bit of a challenge. We're moving faster, not at a scale as I guess we want to have it, but we're getting there. How do you see then, those kinds of which are IT centric, like a bit of the competitive edge, right, to the other tech teams? Where do you think we need to be and place more focus in order to stay competitive on those kinds of new players in the market?
I think we need to have a pretty good idea of where we want to play and what really differentiates us, and what we do ourselves versus where we partner strategically. I mean, I think there's a reason why we're seeing a lot of scalable business models in a B2C context, because the B2C world is much more standardized than the B2B world, and things scale much more easily, right? The 5 billion Facebook users, or let it be 2 billion. There's a lot more homogeneous, in some sense, data point than the machines that we're seeing on a factory level, which are highly individual and which, depending on which sector they're using, are producing data that are not nearly as streamlined. So I think we're gonna, yes, we will need to, I think, shore up our digital skills, especially I think for our people. That'll be crucial, because as we're undergoing this transformation, I think the real capital that we have is the people who are driving our innovations forward, and how well are they equipped to operate in this new environment, to understand these new business models, to understand the customer pain points, and what do they need to understand on machine learning, on AI, on cybersecurity, etc. So I think for me, it's a real strategic imperative as a company that we're really continually learning and in some sense upgrading the skills of our entire population, so to speak, because that'll ensure, I think, that's a necessary condition to remain competitive in this space.
What you just said also touches upon the next question, because which is about ambidexterity. Because isn't it sometimes also like balancing the tightrope walk? On the one side, you have your employees, you have your strengths also as a company, and maybe it sometimes makes sense to like continue strengthening those. But on the other hand, you also want to be ready for the future, for everything that is coming up. So you will want to explore. So how do you approach this race between exploitation and exploration of new opportunities in your team?
Yeah, we try to do both without getting lost, and I think this is the real struggle, right? Because critical voices will also say, well, what disruptive innovations have come from TE and from Siemens in the last 50 years, right? Has there really been some industry disruptions that we've done? And I think the key is empowering your teams to have a mindset to be open to both. So yes, I think there's a lot to be said for incrementally moving topics forward, because if we didn't do that, we would have absolutely no money to play with for the more disruptive things, right? So I think it's about appreciating both and the importance of both, and also signaling that to the teams that, yes, whilst maybe there seems to be more need and more value placed on being super fast, being super agile. You know, I'm using all these buzzwords intentionally here. And the rest is kind of the boring stuff. But I really think it needs both, and both need to be equally appreciated. And the question is, you know, can everyone do both? Or are there pockets in the company where we really should be focusing more on the disruption? And are there other pockets that are more dedicated to as you call it, the exploitation? Yeah, I think in the end, coming back to your original question, Uli, it has to be about the company strategy. You know, do we have a clear vision on where we are focused on exploitation? And even more so, how long we will be able to exploit before what we're trying to exploit actually is fundamentally disrupted, right? So I think this is where it's so important that as a company, we have a clear view, as best as we can, of the future disruptions coming to where we are currently exploiting. Yeah, because that I think that the worst case scenario is that you plan on continuing to exploit for a number of years, and you are not seeing the meteor coming that is going to hit you. And so you've got to be able to have both in mind, and to have the freedom as a company, and I think also the fearlessness to say, yes, I'm going to exploit here, and I'm purposely going to do some things that may actually, in the end, perhaps undermine eventually what I'm trying to exploit, right? But I'm going to do it because I'd rather have it be me than have it be someone else. But I think that takes a lot of courage. That's not very palatable to all the people who are working in the core business. And so I think these are really some of the challenges also for our managing board about how they place priorities and how they steer the company, having that constant trade-off in these two dimensions.
Yeah, well put. I'm a huge fan of Alex Osterwald's actually strategizer the thing. He got this Invictable Company book out there, and you know, differentiate between explore and exploit, and so like, you know, explore as creating new opportunities in research space, right? One essential pillar is time box. You know, if you dare to try new, you have to time box, otherwise you're just losing it. And exploit is then traditional KPIs, which needs a bit more bounded, you know, output aspects. But the exploration needs to be, you know, let's explore the technology and or opportunity or businesses in all different dimensions. But it has to be time boxed, otherwise you get nowhere in this sense. That's kind of a super nice framework. Explore and exploit is also something, right? I guess, you know, as we grow more digital, you know, more and more cyber comes into the play, and especially cyber security, you know, comes into the play. How do you see that? Is that a thing in the material space and electronic space as well? Like per default,
absolutely.
You know,
I think it's
embedded.
It's embedded. I think it's the license to operate. I mean, if we're saying electronics is sort of the connector between the physical and the virtual, then we better make sure that it's not hackable.
So it's a trusty on chips, is it?
Absolutely. I mean, for sure. I mean, again, you know, making the comparison here to the B2C space, everyone seems to be perfectly fine sharing their most intimate data on Facebook about whatever, even, you know, photos of their newborns and etc. The same shareability, willingness to share information is non-existent in the industrial space, because it's highly, highly sensitive, right? I mean, and not just because we're perhaps moving in the defense industry or anything, but a standard, you know, a standard industrial production plant is, just imagine if it's down by 1 or 2 minutes, the economic damage that is done by such an outage. Yeah. So we're dealing in the whole B2B space with extremely sensitive data on the whole, which comes down to trust. Yeah. So I think this will be, I don't even think it'll be a key differentiator. I think, as I said, it's a license to operate. If you as a company are not able to firmly convince your customers of the utmost integrity of their data, their most precious vitals, they will never want to collaborate with you. And we're seeing, right, with the amount, if you just are looking in a daily news report, industrial espionage, hacker attacks, state-based actors. We had this nice industrial spyware case now that was around, made the news a couple of months ago. So I think this topic, I expect it to be a domineering topic over the next years. And it'll be fundamental. It'll be fundamental to driving forward this IT/OT integration. Will be data security. Will be trust. Absolutely.
True.
A lot of what you're just like saying in this short conversation actually shows how broad your knowledge is in this field, and that you like know a lot about very different fields. But how do you do that, Annemarie? How do you keep your innovative and creative spirit up? How do you stay up to date and on top of the research trends, for instance, in the field of AI? Do you have some tips and tricks?
Well, I guess I'm flattered that my high level opinions make me a qualified participant of this discussion. No, I think there's something to do with natural curiosity. I think being the mother of a young child, you learn that you always need to have answers, because the questions you're hit with, they're beyond your wildest imagination. So there's something to be said for just keeping up your own curiosity and trying to just stay interested. And actually, I'm going to out myself now. I don't do too much on social media, all this Twitter and LinkedIn and Facebook and Instagram stuff, because I find the quality of the information is, it varies. And so I try to just be curious in conversations. I think we have so many fascinating people at Siemens who bring so much depth to what they do. So I think this is one great source of information. And really just engaging and listening, I think is worth so much more than seeing what's out there in your little Twitter bubble. And I try to read very broadly in the time that I have, and not just tech magazines, the Technology Review, but The Economist, literature, biographies. I think. Just to get as many influences as possible and to have as many different angles in my work. Because if I were just a technologist looking at my job, I think I wouldn't be doing it justice, right? It would be very one-dimensional. And so I think it's extremely important to keep as broad as possible in terms of who influences you, in terms of where you draw your inspiration from. And I always found that for me, it's very easy to get excited about things. Whether it's a movie, whether it's a book, whether it's a new technology, I like to, I can get lost in it for a couple of hours. And so, the real challenge is not to do that with too many things, because then you, very little time remains for other stuff. But I think the important thing is just to, at least for me, it's always been not to be too narrow, but to, if something strikes your fancy, to read up on it, to follow up on it, even if it's not directly related, because somehow a certain aspect of it will help shape who you are, and you will be able to glean something out of every conversation that you have, out of everything you read, and that's kind of how I operate.
We already touched upon a lot about the sustainability aspect, especially in technology. But I want to go back once again, because I thought it was super inspiring and insightful to talk with you about that. So you also mentioned the UN Climate Change Conference that is taking place right now, and a lot about technology with purpose. And actually you were like the technology with purpose expert, right? Because you worked when you started at Siemens, you started your career actually in the sustainability office, and now you're at Siemens Technology, which is super cool. How has the rise of sustainability in the overall awareness actually influence your research activities? So how is that reflected in what you're doing?
I think I want to say a great deal, and also I want to say that when I took over at the research in energy and electronics, there was already a great team of people who are passionate about sustainability, about sustainable energy technologies working. So it would be very wrong of me to claim that by me going there, now we've suddenly seen the light and are going to work on sustainable technologies. But I think actually, for a long time, Siemens has been a visionary leader when it comes to technologies around, climate change, climate resilience, climate mitigation. And I think the real challenge in it for us lies again, a technology not in being able to invent the most sustainable technologies. If you give people money, they will invent whatever you want. Yeah. I think the real challenge for us lies in we have these great ideas around, for example, how grids could operate in the future, how they could become more intelligent, how we can make them much more effective. But how do we find a business case behind it? How do we turn that into a business for Siemens? And I think this to me is the greatest challenge I still see around this topic of sustainable technologies. It's not that we're lacking ideas of what we could do technologically, but it is about how we translate those ideas into market opportunities and into economic cases for our customers. And I think this is where we need to focus on. How do we bring those two, the market and the technologies, together? Yeah, and I think this is what we've really been working on. And I think I'm seeing a lot more collaboration also between T and our business units in the quest around these ideas for new business models. And I think which is very much the direction we need to go in.
But how can we get faster and better in finding those business models and finding maybe those use cases? I read a lot about companies like Microsoft and Google who are having those huge AI for good campaigns, investing $100 million there to explore use cases that don't really just seem profitable, like saving the snow leopard from extinction or something, but maybe those, like the exploration activities in those fields, could be a first step of exploring and maybe also finding then eventually in the mid to long term profitable use cases there. Do you think that this could be also a way for Siemens, like having initiatives like that?
I think what we need to do as Siemens is to leverage the world beyond us much more effectively. So we recently had the Tech for Sustainability campaign, for example, which, it was just a first idea. But I said in my pitch there, and I firmly believe it, that the challenge we are up to with the topic of decarbonization is so significant. It will not be solved by a single company. It will not be solved by a single state actor. It won't be solved by a single foundation. It needs all of us together and the universities of this world as well. So I think, a company as Siemens, which is so present globally, I think our role can really be in this topic to bring people together. Yeah. To source the best ideas. We don't necessarily need to have them in-house, right? I think the answer will be in bringing those who have the best ideas, together and making something out of it. So I think that the topic of open innovation, of innovation challenges, of interdisciplinary teams coming together that are staffed by customers, by universities, by Siemens employees, working on challenges. I think that's the way forward. Yeah. I am a firm believer that in the end, sounds cheesy, but in the end, working as a team with, again, these different perspectives can be really inspirational and can really help you turn a corner when you seem to be stuck somewhere. So it's about connecting people, bringing the best minds together in the search for not just what is technologically possible, but again, what can be turned into market offering. And certainly, politics will have to play a role here as well, right? In how we incentivize and how we structure our markets and how we price carbon, for example. So I think also here, as a global company, and certainly one with a big footprint in Germany, I think, and now this is getting political, I think we as Siemens can certainly, I think, take also firm positions on where we stand on some of these issues to drive the debate and to pull our weight here.
Very cool opinion. Thanks for sharing. Now we want to move from technology and politics and innovation to a more personal part. So it actually goes without saying that you act as a role model for many women out there as you inspire them to start a career in tech or science. But who was actually your role model at the time that encouraged you to follow this path? And what were some difficulties arising along the way?
So this is a difficult question. And I know previously, I think on this question, I say things like, oh, it's Marie Curie, right? Which is an obvious go-to when you're a young woman in sciences. In the end, actually, we probably don't even know who the most truly inspirational people of this world are, because we don't know them, because their stories are not spoken of, right? It's probably some, young mother in Africa who's trying to, do sustainable farming to raise her family. It's young tech pioneers somewhere in China who are experimenting with new traction systems. So we don't know where. And basically, what I'm saying is essentially everyone, I think, can be very inspirational. And I think the important thing is, and the important advice for me was always not aspiring to be like someone else, because every person has to find their own way. And you have to, the best thing you can do is to believe in yourself and to stick to who you are, to be true to what you think and feel and value, and to follow those instincts. And then you can take inspiration from a lot of different amazing people out there, a lot of them not famous. And I think this for me was always the key. It's about being true to who you are and not trying to be something or someone else, in trying to find your own way.
Here we go. Nice one. Yeah. So even though we're trying to invite these hidden figures, right? These hidden innovators, obviously, to this podcast. Here we go. We make them hopefully somehow accessible. So, working in corporates is, especially in Siemens, no, actually in large corporates, is always crazy. I think it's super crazy. It's super fascinating. You have this, this super network, experts, colleagues, she and he all around the world, and getting engaged, getting challenges, but it's also super tricky, right? Mm-hmm. So what kind of tips would you give the younger folks out there, right? Who's I want to make a difference. Mm-hmm. I catch the ball, and so like physical digital world, that makes sense. What would you recommend them? Is there anything you would have back in the days, as a student level or early professional, you would love to hear prior? You should have told me that prior, guys. Right? Any tips?
Yeah. So I always like to say, working at a large corporation is kind of a neat combination of Game of Thrones, House of Cards, and The Office. If you throw those three together, that's kind of
exactly.
That's kind of my daily life. What I try to do, and what I try to live with my teams, and also which I think is the best mentality, and which I would give as advice to anyone. It's play to win. Yeah. Don't play not to lose. It's about playing to win. Because the things we are working on, frankly, we can't afford to lose. Yeah, they're too important. When it comes to developing new technologies that are going to move the world forward, we have to play to win. And by that I mean, don't be afraid of the political shenanigans that may happen, of, all these alignments that are needed, and who says what and who thinks what and who stands to gain. And, there's just, as you said, so many discussions in a complex environment like Siemens that can detract from what you're actually trying to do. And so for me, it's all about playing to win. Yeah. And I think this is really freeing, because I'm fundamentally convinced that what we are working on is right and it's necessary. Yeah. And if someone wants to tell me differently, they're welcome to, but I'm still going to try with everything that I have to move the topics that I believe are right forward. Yeah? Because I think we owe it to our employees, we owe it to the company, we owe it to our children to have that kind of attitude.
Wow. What a beautiful ending to this episode. Annemarie, thanks so much for being you, for being so open, for being on the show, for sharing so much. It was, I learned a lot, and it was a lot of fun. And we always have a little ritual, a little game at the end of each episode. It's a game that we want to play with you. It's called Authentic Autocomplete. And for the closing, I will give you a couple of sentence starters and you will just finish. Annemarie, are you ready?
All right. And I did not look at the questions beforehand. So whatever you get now, as promised, is really Freudian, unfiltered. Let's see how it goes. Right?
So let's start with an easy one. Siemens is
an amazing company.
That was an easy one. That was an easy one, wasn't it? That's how.
Technology with purpose is
why I get out of bed in the morning every day.
Wow. The best advice I was ever given was
playing to win.
There you go. Consistent.
Now it's getting more difficult. If I could change one thing in the world immediately, it would be
this fundamental inequality that we see between the developed and the developing world. I know it's not an easy one, but
I like that. And last but not least, the next big thing at Siemens will be
decarbonization as a service.
There we go. Love it. That should do the job then for the next 10 years. There you go. Annemarie, thanks so much for, spending this time with us and being so open, being so passionate, being so honest, sharing your views a bit on the world of technology, craziness, but also AI and machine learning. I'm super excited, about our conversation here. And so thanks so much for being there.
Thanks for having me. I enjoyed it very much.
And folks out there, stay tuned. There's a bit more to come. So we have now a challenge, I guess, from Annemarie, right? We need to get more innovative folks, right? And hidden figures, which change, the future to be included in here. So stay bold, committed, open-minded. And we hear us at the next Siemens AI Lab podcast. Cheers.